Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 4 of Jean Grey, written by Louise Simonson. But before we get started with the story, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel if you find anything interesting within the comics covered here, for with your help, this channel can grow and improve. So with that said, the final issue of Jean Grey opens with our hero surrounded by several versions of herself, several versions that are all blaming the main Jean for their shortcomings. Because according to them, Jean was responsible for all the mutants' deaths, including her own. Which is something our Jean Grey couldn't truly understand, because according to her, she has died many times before, so that couldn't be the real reason why her variants are angry. So with that out there, other variants then go on to say, they are fragments of her past, fragments of her nightmare, and this is really just a product of imaginary stories she has been telling herself. So ultimately, none of this is real. Or at least, it isn't supposed to be real, but in the White Hot Room, everything is real, in its own way. So with Jean trying to unravel everything, she started to have a conversation with one of her variants. And during that interaction, one of the variants states, she saw a dozen realities, and based off of everything she saw, she was ready to erase the X-Men's memories of the future, until our Jean Grey stepped in, during issue number 1 of this story. And with all those changes, she used those memories to forge another terrible future, a future in which she bought the Phoenix into. And by doing that, she made her who she is, a killer who killed everybody all because she didn't trust herself to leave well enough alone. Because she had to meddle in where she wasn't needed. But that is when our Jean tries to stand up for herself by saying, the X-Men were all dead and she had to know if there was anything she could have done to save them. But following that, her variants responded by saying you're confused because she is the one who is dead. And when it comes to if she picked the right choice or not, that is an easy answer. Which is yes, up to this point Jean has made all the right choices. And in her attempts to redo everything, all he managed to do is inflict pain upon the world. So in all honesty, all Jean had to really do is trust her instincts, and trust herself. And at that moment, the Phoenix flies into her chest. Now, following that, Jean Grey goes on to say, she needs to consider the ramifications, to think things through. But that is when another variant of Jean goes on to say, why did you force that nightmare upon her? Because in issue number 2 our Jean changed things to where both Cyclops and Wolverine died before her eyes. So with that bit of news out there, our Jean apologized for everything. She said her decision was based on arrogance as she stood in the ashes of the X-Men wondering if maybe she was wrong. Because according to our Jean, she thought maybe it would have been better if someone else was in charge. Maybe it wasn't all up to her. But unfortunately, the reality is that the Phoenix had hidden within her body while she healed, and while in there, it took on Jean's aspects in her name, it destroyed worlds, it rode her anger, your needs, as far as was possible until your true will asserted itself, and stopped it, and supposedly lost your life in the process. But see, that wasn't the end, not by a long shot. Because eventually they found her true body cocooned beneath the sea and awoke in it. And with her life back in her hands, she was returned to Scott and all was restored. But regardless of everything being fixed, Jean still saw it as bad because of everything that happened afterwards. Because the impulse of arrogance didn't work, so ultimately she turned to logic, but from that perspective, the reality was much kinder to her at least, but when it came to Madeline Pryor, things were not so great. Because while Jean was gone, Madeline had everything she wanted and needed. She was actually preparing to marry Scott as a blank slate with everything open in front of her. But once Jean Grey re-entered their life, Maddie was cast aside and left to her rage. And through that rage, she became the ruler of all the demons, which gave her free reign over the techno-organically transformed world. And in the end, both of them got consumed by their rage to where the world almost ended. But even there, Jean could have stopped her by calling on the Phoenix for help, but again Jean second-guessed herself and questioned her priorities. And because of that, so many people were never the same. And from Maddie's perspective, Jean was at fault, because in the shuttle, the Phoenix Force came to her, but Jean rejected the Phoenix and so it came and found Maddie in Sinister's cocoon. And once there it brought death even as it breathed life into her body. Because at the end of the day, Jean didn't rewrite that scenario, and make herself accept the Phoenix offer, but rather she just shuffled the power onto Wolverine and then to Scott. Because of course Jean believed taking on the Dark Phoenix, tainted as it was, with the death of millions couldn't have been a sound answer either. But see, if she did take the power on, then Madeline would have never received any power, she would have never lived, Cable would have never been born, and she would have never ruled hell. Effectively, Maddie would have never existed, which begged the question, would they have been better off if she would have cut off the source of her power? And strangely enough, the Maddie that stands before her remind her that love is what she is all about. So with that realization dawning on her, the Phoenix appeared back to let her know that she has been creating worlds to prove that she had no choice. Creating nightmare tales about how the Phoenix and Jean, if together, only brings death and destruction. Pretty much painting the picture that she was damned if she did and damned if she didn't. Because all paths lead to death in the stories she wanted to tell herself. So with the reality sinking in, Jean started to wake up and remember the Hellfire Gala. The party where everything changed, the party where Orcus attacked. She remembers Orcus, anti-mutant fanatics, attacking and how she tried to protect everybody. But ultimately, she failed to do as intended when Moira came into the picture and jabbed a knife right through her back. Now with the shock hitting Jean, she started to wonder, why did the Phoenix not come to her at that moment? But that is when the Phoenix responded by saying, "How could I? I'm as dead now as you are." Because like Jean Grey, the Phoenix only exists here in the White Hot Room, which is a nexus between all Phoenix hosts and the Eternal Flame. And while there, the Phoenix is divided into small bits and pieces. So basically, it is inactive, but the White Hot Room is still the heart of the Phoenix, even if it is broken at this current time. So with that said, when Jean first awoke here, she asked out loud, what did she do wrong? And which the Phoenix responds by saying the answer to that question is nothing. So throughout this entire comic run, the Phoenix has been trying to show her and teach her that she must trust her own instincts. For her impulses were true, that she was right to do everything that she has done up to this point. But the truth is, even though Jean Grey did everything right, other forces were still at play, so there was nothing she could do about it. So no matter what choices they make, death will always claim its reward. But not us, at least not yet, not completely. For they are not alone here, and there's one more thing we can do together. And that is to save their friends, because on the next page, we see Jean Grey returning to her feet with the Phoenix at her side in the White Hot Room before Apocalypse, Hope, and Exodus. And once there, Jean tells Hope that everything is up to her now, but she will do all she can to help. And that is when Exodus describes the White Hot Room as a higher spiritual realm, a place of primal creativity, of ideas made flesh. So with Hope having the ability to mimic powers, Jean comes up with a plan, the only herself, Hope, and the Phoenix Force could pull off, and that is giving Hope her powers. So with a single touch, one last gambit, Hope emerged with the Phoenix at her command. So with Hope and Exodus ready for whatever, they charged her first into the fight as Jean watched on. Because Jean is no longer the woman everyone used to know. For now, Jean is life incarnate, now and forever. And as for, if she is the Phoenix or not, who knows? Maybe they are something else, something new. But regardless of what they are, on this day, they did no harm. And moving forward, she would just follow her guts, follow her instincts, follow who she really is. And if she was being honest, she knows. This isn't over, not for them, not for their union. Not for any of this. But what comes next, be it life or death, Jean and Phoenix will face it together. So with that said, the final issue of Jean Grey comes to an end. Now when it comes to this conclusion, I think the story ended with an understanding that was much needed between Jean and the Phoenix. And moving forward, I really want to see how this new understanding between the two would evolve their character. Because as we all see, Jean and the Phoenix is the perfect combination. But anyway, down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.